Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today to discuss how businesses can use IoT technology to improve supply chain logistics. As we've seen in recent months, our supply chain systems are critical in ensuring goods and services are delivered at the right time and at the right place. While for some, it may feel like ages ago, shortages in grocery, healthcare equipment, and cleaning supplies have illuminated just some of the gaps we have in our supply chain systems. Most importantly, businesses who have been able to quickly adapt to changing demand have shown resiliency and growth during this time of economic downturn. All of these events have led businesses around the globe of all sizes to take a look at their supply chain systems and technologies to manage and navigate future shocks. The good news is many businesses have been adopting IoT over the last decade, if not longer, to improve their supply chain systems in order to realize efficiencies and improve customer experience. Technologies such as fleet management and asset monitoring systems have been on the steady rise as these solutions are not just useful during pandemics, but in operations in general. It may come as no surprise then that this adoption is expected to accelerate as businesses rethink their supply chain systems for the new normal that's currently unfolding. Today, we'll talk about several trends in the market, new developments, and reasons as to why, now more than ever, businesses need to leverage the power of IoT in their supply chain operations. Before we get started, I wanted to share some housekeeping items with you. For all the folks on the live stream, at any time, you can submit a question and we will be doing Q&A at the end. Down at the bottom of your screen, you will see the question submission box. Just type your question in there and it will be submitted. You will see your question disappear, but don't worry, we will have it and we'll make sure to follow up with you. I'm pleased to be joined by a panel of experts today who bring a wealth of knowledge on the topic of how businesses can use IoT technology to improve supply chain logistics. First, I'd like to welcome Robin Baines, the leader of Deloitte's Canadian IoT practice and helps clients unlock value across the end-to-end IoT value chain from sensor endpoints to advanced analytics insights. Robin is a senior manager in Deloitte's technology, strategy, and innovation consulting practice. He has over 20 years of industry and consulting experience developing strategy and delivering large-scale programs in digital, data analytics, Internet of Things, and enterprise architecture across multiple industries, including telecommunications, consumer and industrial products, financial services, energy and resources, and the public sector. Deloitte and Rogers have enjoyed a strong relationship for the past 10 plus years, and during that time, we have collaborated on several client initiatives, including those involving the Internet of Things. Second, I'd like to welcome Sandeep Kaur, Chief Strategy Officer at Fleet Complete, a global expert and thought leader in technology strategy development for the commercial vehicle market. Sandeep leads corporate strategy at Fleet Complete, a leading provider of global IoT solutions for a wide array of commercial vehicle industry partners. He works closely with manufacturers and suppliers developing strategies to help companies take advantage of advanced technologies in a globalized operations environment. Announced in January earlier this year, Rogers and Fleet Complete have formed a partnership to bring innovative, leading-edge fleet management solutions to the Canadian market for businesses of all sizes. Finally, I'd like to welcome Scott Hurley, Vice President of Product Marketing at Roamby. Scott has over 10 years of experience in product management and development in the SaaS for transportations and logistics markets. Before Roamby, Scott led several teams in the fleet and rail industries, as well as a variety of roles in product leadership and strategic licensing. He has also led geographic information or GIS consulting activities for several companies. As some of you may have recently seen, Rogers and Roamby have also formed a new partnership to bring some of the most innovative asset tracking and monitoring solutions to the Canadian market. Thanks for joining me, guys, and let's get right into it. Robin, Deloitte works with a wide range of companies all over the globe and helping them in their supply chain digital transformation initiatives. I'm sure there's a wealth of experience and knowledge captured through these engagements. To help us get grounded, Could you shed some light on what challenges that we have seen in Canadian and global supply chain over the past few months? And maybe in addition to that, what trends are you seeing from the industry in order to solve for these challenges?
Yeah, definitely, Ricky. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm delighted to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. And I hope that everyone and their families have been keeping safe and healthy and faring as best as possible with this COVID-19 pandemic. These are different and new times, and there's constant change and a continuous need for updates to understand how to respond and adapt so that we can all drive towards specific actions for better outcomes, personally, professionally, and socially. So thank you again. Now, to answer your question, Ricky, on what have we seen in Canadian global supply chains over the past several months, our research at Deloitte suggests that COVID-19 could be considered a black swan event that took the world by complete storm and surprise. It was newly identified first at the end of December 2019, and by February, almost 90,000 people were infected worldwide. And today, I think we're on the order of 10 million people infected globally. This has impacted supply chains globally, of course, from raw materials to finished goods. COVID-19 is a global pandemic without a modern parallel. The lack of precedent for this black swan event is so broad that it has impacts across geographic, demographic, and economic sectors. Some companies are better prepared to respond because they have put systems and controls in place to provide that visibility across their extended supply chain. That way, they can better understand and drive actions based on their own strategic priorities through control towers that sense, respond to, and even can predict supply chain issues. Other companies, on the other hand, they're still trying to figure things out because they don't have these processes and controls in place. There are a number of trends and shifts that we're seeing and risks that need to be managed, such as prioritizing employee safety while maintaining productivity. Business continuity is another area that needs to be maintained. Also managing supply chain constraints. And finally, enhancing supply chain visibility through digital investments in technologies. First and foremost, just to expand on the biggest shift, which is focused on the workforce, health and wellness, ensuring there is sensitivity to what your employees and customers are experiencing, not just experiencing, but also feeling, providing them support in establishing new norms on ways of working through remote tools, virtual tools, digital collaboration platforms, online training, all in all, and to ensure that these are secured ways of communicating through connectivity measures. Organizations are already down this path, but now many more are going down this path and standardizing on the path to work remotely, and also iteratively establishing digital norms, practices, and operating models inside their own organizational cultures on digital platforms. The second big shift that we're seeing is around collaboration. Cross-functional, cross-enterprise, and cross the supply chain ecosystem, all to ensure that risk management frameworks are in place. Now is not the time to assume that the worst is over. You need to continue to manage all risks: credit, customer, supply chain, operational, cyber. The list goes on and on with discipline. We're all in this together, trying to work through COVID-19, the whole global pandemic crisis together, learning in real time, getting real world feedback in real time, and applying those learnings at the right time so that we can all come out stronger. There's much cross collaboration happening inside of organizations. But in addition to that, there's also now collaboration happening with alliance partners, direct supply chain partners, and the extended supplier partner network, both on the demand side and the supply side. And when it comes to orchestrating recovery through collaborative efforts and initiatives, ensure that control towers in the digital supply network are leveraged using new digital technologies that are emerging that can provide that end-to-end visibility of the supply chain. We've got to, as organizations, shift away from the traditional linear way of looking at the supply chain, which is plan, source, make, deliver, and support. All of these have inherent functional silos. There's latencies in decisioning that cause bullwhip effects that we're all too familiar with already. And what we need to do is rethink and shift towards a digital supply network that's always on, it's agile, is interconnected, and it provides end-to-end visibility. The DSN enables collaboration, it enables data and information sharing, all for holistic decision-making, for synchronized planning, intelligent supply, digital product development, all for the connected customer. The DSN is on the rise and is realized by the control tower, which is a solution that manages all sorts of incoming data flows, allows you to drive insights and execute on decisions. And it does all this to support timely decision making through right time data visibility from an operation perspective, and also proactive alerting and prescriptive insights. There's various classes of control towers, such as the supply chain control tower, the customer service control tower, and the factory control tower. All these are advances in information and communications are making the evolution to the DSN through control towers a lot more real, using technologies such as IoT, 5G, big data, AI, and robotics, to name a few. The DSN is going to help manage both volatile business environments and against future black swan events. And the DSN must not only be aligned to corporate strategy, but it should be considered integral to its formulation.
Thanks, Robin. That was super insightful, and I think really it's really about the supply chain and that whole stream of interconnected networks that's bringing IoT and several of the technologies to life like we've never seen before. It's unlocking that power of combining several sets of data to allow businesses to quickly adapt and unlock new insights as they move forward. So, given these trends and shifts, maybe Sandeep and Scott, you guys are, big solution providers in these spaces. Maybe you guys could shed some light on how you guys see IoT technologies making the evolution of supply chain more possible. Sandeep, you want to give it a go?
Absolutely. And I will not talk about evolution. I'll focus more on the revolution that is happening in the market. And, for the longest time, retail industry and transportation industry were operating in their own little vacuum. And now those worlds are colliding. I'll give you an example. Total retail market size in 2011 globally was $11.8 trillion, of which 5% was based on online transactions. By 2025, which is 5 years from now, that size of the market is going to reach $23 trillion, of which 19% would be accounted by online transactions. Now, I'm pretty sure all of us in this call today, as well as the audience, pretty much in the last few months or years have bought something or the other from an e-commerce platform. The moment you do that, what you really are deriving is not only that shipment, but also the ability to monitor that freight and its delivery parameters. And so now the point I'm trying to make here is retail and transportation worlds are now completely synergized and intertwined. So the evolution or the revolution that is happening really is resulting from the collision of these two worlds. Now once again, coming back to the world we live in. My daughter is 12 years old. When she expects that dad buys something for her through Amazon, she expects that stuff will be delivered to our doorstep within the next 24, 48 hours. My son is 4 years old. By the time he will be 12, he should and he will expect that should reach our doorstep within the next few hours. Something is going to deliver that freight at our doorstep on time, every time. It's going to be a commercial vehicle. Yes, there's a lot of talk about drones doing that, but let's park that thought for a while. But something is going to deliver that. The idea is to get that vehicle at our doorstep on time, every time, so that that is my daughter or my son or myself or my wife, we are happy customers. And that's how e-commerce will thrive. So point being, IoT or Internet of Things is the enabler of that future that we're dreaming today and which will happen in due course. Now, when we think of a vehicle, that we think of the vehicle as a thing. But understand, a vehicle is a sum total of several things. There's an engine, there's a transmission, there's an axle, there are brake systems, each of which is crucial for the vehicle's overall performance, efficiency, and efficacy. And when we talk about Internet of Things, we are now getting down to that system component module level now and ensuring that we have complete visibility into the position, the health, wellness, well-being, functionality, uptime, downtime, safety, security of all these systems. And that's where IoT is going to play a crucial role. Once again, coming back to that freight, once a freight is ordered, let's say I bought something that was made in a factory in Korea, that freight probably landed in Vancouver port, and then a bunch of people processed, touched, or influenced that freight. So you got intermodal freight processors, warehouse handlers, truck fleets, then the customer. And along that journey, volumes of data is generated. What Fleet Complete does is we analyze that data, We analyze that data and add layers and layers of analysis on top of that to make that data actionable, make the data mission critical and useful so that we can help improve mobile resource management efficiency, improve speed and efficacy of delivery of the freight. Now, that is just one example. That's from a freight angle. If you were to look at other angles, for example, ensuring that the vehicle is operating at peak efficiency, it's being driven safely, and ensuring that the utilization of that fleet or the vehicle is maximum, the carbon footprint is minimum, and most importantly, the total cost of ownership of the vehicle is reduced, then IoT is the solution. IoT technologies help improve end-to-end visibility and help fleet managers in making mission-critical decisions. The challenge, however, and this is the last point I'm going to make here, is there's too much data, too little information. Now, thanks to sensors and various IoT technologies, we are drinking from a fire hose, and the entire industry is. The idea is to reduce the burden on fleet managers and others who have to make crucial decisions. And that is where predictive and prescriptive analytics are coming to the rescue, once again, enabled by IoT. So that's where I see IoT technologies making evolutionary and revolutionary changes to supply chain in the next few months, years out, so that black swan events like these become really white swan events for the future.
Thanks, Sandeep. That's awesome. I mean, quite a bit of change. And obviously, not only does the IoT allow us to keep up with changing customer demand, like your daughter and her expectations of the future, but also help businesses, realize some of those efficiencies. And then, yes, for sure, there's definitely the data overload, and companies like Fleet Complete can really turn data into information and insights. Scott, maybe you want to touch on how IoT technologies are making the evolution of supply chain more possible?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you for the opportunity to be on the webinar. As well said, when I talk about asset management and asset monitoring today, what I mean is multimodal, end-to-end shipment of goods, packages, or assets. So that could be finished goods, it could be work in process, it could be actual physical assets like equipment. And the actual tracking and monitoring for location and conditions. So there's quite a bit that, for example, that Fleet Complete does on the fleet side with drivers and all the things you just talked about. We're really focusing just on the location and on the conditions of the goods that are being shipped. But that means in transit, but also within warehouses, within yards, or even within stores. So for understanding and improving inventory monitoring, for example. And all of this is done using live IoT sensors. So from a global perspective, making sure they have global SIM cards, have global certifications to work everywhere and allowed to be cleared through customs, having the types of reverse logistic operations necessary to recover and return reusable sensors. And ultimately, it's about creating curated content that enables second order value for gaining and increasing visibility and control, increasing efficiency and performance, increasing safety and security, better compliance, and ultimately about transforming your supply chain. So when we talk about the evolution of technologies, the way that I like to think about it is 4 different levels, where we start off with level 1, the traditional existing sensorless EDI visibility. This is getting data from your freight forwarder, for example, other existing visibility solutions that don't rely on live IoT sensors. That gives you quite a bit, but much more is provided when you add the accuracy, the granularity, and the timeliness of live IoT sensor-enabled visibility, actually having a sensor with each package, either the container level or at the package level. It could be a crate, it could be a pallet, etc. So that allows you then in real time to act on signals that are being created from that in terms of temperature excursions, exit of the geofence, other things that allow you to not just know after the fact, but be able to actually do something about it. To include when in a warehouse or a store, same type of use cases. The third is bringing those together. So adding sensor data with curated data from, again, freight forwarders, from traffic, weather, cargo IQ, other visibility providers, so that you really get a swarm intelligence as you have that critical threshold of devices and input into the market, you can really start to understand and then predict how different journeys are going to perform across lanes and what lanes will provide that level of performance that you need. And to evaluate that properly, you really need to go to level 4 from a strategic perspective, a network level visibility and intelligence. So instead of just reacting each individual shipment's journey to include within a warehouse or a store, but understanding at the network and lane level how they are performing, how your transporters are performing, benchmarking against each other, choosing which lanes work best from a performance, compliance, and security standpoint. So really, in the context of today's world, having a safe and adaptive supply chain is just as important as having the lean supply chain, which is what much of the focus of the last 20 years has been on. Having these real-time sensors allows these actionable signals to be generated and responded to, and provide visibility as manufacturers start to, in some cases, even redesign their supply chains. So there may be standard lanes they are used to, but as there are disruptions in the market and they need to quickly adapt, having information in hand already to understand what ones will work best is really important. And so that's helping prepare for tomorrow. And in order to do this, you really need to have data to make the decisions, or you're working blind. So what we've seen over the course of the past several months is that the real-time visibility for asset management has moved from a nice to have, similar to having an insurance policy, to really being a must have. And those who are unprepared to make these decisions based on data will be challenged to survive, quite frankly. But those that are armed with this critical visibility and insight to make fact-based real-time decisions, we expect to thrive.
Wow. There's definitely a lot going on in the fleet and asset management space. And I think both of you would agree that we've come a long way from just tracking a dot on a map. So, both Fleet Complete and Roamby are fairly new partnerships for Rogers that we're super excited about, not only because of the breadth of experience and suite of products that you guys bring, as you've kind of started to already demonstrate, but also the fact that you're some of our first partners to leverage the national Rogers LTE-M network that we launched in 2018 and expanded nationally in 2019. For those of you that may not be familiar with LTE-M, it's a low-power, wide-area network technology that we've brought to the market. LTE-M, which stands for LTE for machine, has the potential to reduce device costs by up to 80%. It improves range and penetration up to 40%. And can improve battery life for up to 10 years. It's specifically designed for the very use cases in this discussion, such as fleet and asset monitoring, as both Sandeep, Scott, and Robin have described, as these use cases tend not to require a lot of speed, but require better coverage for when trucks may be in remote areas or assets that might be in warehouses where traditional LTE coverage may not exist. Similarly, the lower total cost of ownership unlocked by LTE-M enables businesses to cost-effectively monitor assets and goods that were previously not feasible due to cost or limited battery life. In addition to LTE-M, we're also very proud to have Canada's first and only NB-IoT network, which we continue to expand in 2020. NB-IoT stands for Narrowband IoT. NB-IoT offers very, very similar benefits to LTE-M, but is more suited for stationary assets and offers even better coverage, lower cost, and longer battery life as compared to LTE-M. And lastly, I would be remiss not to talk about 5G as part of a little bit of a network sidebar. Without covering all the details, 5G is going to put what I just spoke about on the steroids and bring many of the use cases that our panel guests have already brought up. 5G is truly designed for the Internet of Things, as it will enable 10 times more devices to be connected, but it can also support up to 20 times faster speeds and about 1/10 of the latency that we see on today's LTE or 4G networks. And in the world of supply chain logistics, this means more remote-controlled robots, autonomous trucks, drones, and AI use cases will all come to life like we've never seen. But Getting back to supply chain transformations, perhaps each of you can describe what industries are taking advantage of in the supply chain logistics IoT solutions category, not only to improve their ability to cope with COVID-19, but also differentiate themselves in a post-pandemic world. Maybe Robin, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. So from what we're seeing in the market, there are industries and sectors that are leading the way to leveraging IoT solutions in the supply chain. When COVID-19 was first declared a global pandemic, many organizations started to pivot by scaling back their digital initiatives and decided to focus on cash flow and working capital, which is pragmatic because they need to respond before they can start to figure out ways to recover and before they can really start pressing forward to thriving. However, their digital programs and investments did not experience the same level or ratio of scaling back. In fact, most of them continued to or accelerate the digital programs or plan to accelerate the programs such as the telematics systems provided by IoT. As an example, transportation and logistics continued with track and trace, fleet management, and cold chain compliance. Manufacturing started experimenting and trialing with self-assessment tools, density monitoring, contact tracing, physical distance monitoring inside of their yards, on their docks, shipping and receiving site, and their factories, really to get their employees and workers back into the flow of work. And this was especially true for consumer packaged goods and grocery retailers that experienced the high volume of online groceries orders, curbside pickups, and then they started experimenting with home delivery of groceries. Life sciences and healthcare is another industry that continued with their digital thrust into telematics. Furthermore, mobility devices and apps are also being used to enable digital dexterity for non-touch ways to keep things moving with business process automation. Think digital document management, where you have digital document management tools for signing, reviewing, and releasing payments to drivers in 24 hours versus the regular 1 to 2 week window. It's a lot faster, it's cheaper, and it provides a better experience for everyone, especially the drivers. In summary, there's many applications of IoT in the DSN that we're seeing across the industry from the first mile to the last mile. And I'm sure that Sandeep and Scott will touch upon these.
Great. Thanks, Robin. Sandeep, maybe tell us what Fleet Complete is seeing from an industry perspective.
Yeah, Ricky. So we do serve the fleet management industry. So I'm going to talk about fleets and what kind of advantages they are gaining in the post-COVID world thanks to IoT and advanced telematics. So first of all, a huge amount of gratitude to our first responders, to the healthcare industry in supporting our economies and nations in this time of need. So that is one segment of the market that obviously we serve, and telematics is delivering unbelievable amounts of support. So first responders, last mile logistics. We talked about earlier how supply chains were, in certain sectors were getting disrupted. So ensuring that last mile logistics is supported by telematics is a key focal point for us. That's another industry. Construction. So as governments start to stimulate economies, we will see more focus on construction industry, and so that industry needs better asset utilization and optimization. Small to mid-sized businesses are facing tremendous hardship, and so the focus is on reducing TCO, total cost of ownership, and maximizing utilization uptime of their vehicles. So these are some of the industries that we have seen are benefiting from telematics technologies. And beyond that, from a more of a long-term and fundamental and foundation level perspective, it's the entire logistics and supply chain industry that is benefiting from digital freight platforms. What do I mean by digital freight platforms? So, for example, think of a vehicle, a truck that has delivered a freight to Toronto, and that truck has made that trip from Montreal to Toronto. On the way back to Montreal, it doesn't find any freight. What we do at Fleet Complete is we find freight for that vehicle on an on-demand basis so that it can go back to Montreal fully loaded. So now that is what is called reducing deadhead miles. So these trucks that are right now, roaming around the streets of or the highways of GTA trying to find freight, they are called deadhead trucks. By finding them freight on an on-demand basis, we are reducing deadhead miles, and in doing so, improving air quality, reducing traffic, and most importantly, enhancing logistics efficiency. So we are helping shippers meet carriers through digital freight platforms. And in doing so, generating income, not only cutting costs, but generating income for our fleet customers. You don't start a fleet business to cut cost or reduce TCO. You do it to generate revenues. And that's what technology is now enabling us to do. So these are some of the industries that are leading the way in terms of embracing fleet management and are benefiting from the advancements fleet management is delivering.
Wow, that's quite a bit. And you're definitely right. I mean, I agree with your sentiments. A big thank you to the first responders. But, I think a big thank you to companies like yourselves that are frankly helping a lot of these first responders, these SMBs, and so many other industries navigate not only the current, turn of events, but also, kind of introducing new platforms and technologies like you described, kind of like the Uber for trucking, to really unlock new value and help these businesses not only survive the pandemic, but I think become stronger and better as they navigate their way out of it. So maybe Scott, from a Roamby perspective, what are you guys seeing in terms of some of the industries that are maybe leading the way with asset management, both in terms of, I guess, in the current environment, but where you see maybe growth in the future?
Right. So what we're seeing is the common pain points. To summarize some of what Robin talked about that are driving what industries really have an increased need for include waylaid goods with the inability to plan where to deliver based on clear routes and demands, more risk and cold chain excursions and inventory spending longer on the road, fewer people staffing the warehouses, and having high value inventory stuck on the roads, ports, or airports. And so because of those factors, we're seeing that companies that ship perishable goods, so food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, certainly, when they have their shipments in transit for longer, there's more likelihood that temperature or other environmental excursions can occur. And so they need to know exactly where they are located and what the conditions are at all times, so that if they need to make a change to be able to rescue that shipment of goods, they can do something about it. We also see industries such as, again, food and beverage and consumer goods, when we're talking about alcohol and tobacco, for example, where it's not just the loss of the goods, but much more the safety concerns of it being tampered with, especially as they're being moved globally or stolen and sold on the black market and possibly diluted in quality or becoming a real concern, safety danger to the people that may use it. So again, knowing exactly where their goods are, what condition they're in, that they are safe, is becoming much more important as they've had to spend more time in routes or take different journeys that they don't know as much about. We're also seeing it with high value goods, whether it's large electronics, industrial, chemicals, and other luxury goods, whereby the cost of losing any of those, whether it's to just because they don't know where they are, or whether somebody steals them, has become really is really high. And again, there's a greater danger now because of the different journeys that sometimes they have to take. From what we've seen on the consumer goods side, understanding demand spikes and inventory fluctuations becomes really important, as we've seen across the globe. Rolling waves of demand for things like toilet paper, right? And then there are stockpiles of goods in one spot, and there are shortages in others, and the ability to adapt to that and make sure the supply chain is able to meet where the demand is you need to have visibility in your warehouses in addition to in transit to be able to do that. It's also really important for automotive because, again, that's a high value good, although we have seen some slowdown in the actual movement of automotive vehicles throughout the globe. In Canada, we've seen that, for example, one of our customers is a 3PL that deals with cold chain shipping for drugstores in Canada. They've actually not been impacted, at least on the surface, because it is an essential service, but they have seen some difficulties on the inbound in terms of getting the supplies they need to deliver to those drugstores. Also in Canada, a major Canadian airline that we work with, cargo movement is still critical to their business, but because they also operate the passenger side, they've had some layoffs, and having the necessary people to perform the logistics becomes challenging. So having automated knowledge of inventory becomes even more important as they have less people to do it with. And then finally, some of the successes that we've seen from real-time visibility include a quote from Mondelez that's we've been working with to ship chocolate. And of course, that is very temperature sensitive for the quality of it. So they've said that we're improving our efficiencies with the visibility, with condition-sensitive shipments and route real-time location and condition visibility is helping making decisions on delivery and rerouting amidst the lockdown. And then the second and final quote comes from Mercedes-Benz, who have been helping gain real-time visibility for the movement of their automobiles. They said that live sensor devices with remote extendable battery life placed with our shipments tell us exactly where our goods are. This helps secure goods till lockdowns are lifted, even if it takes weeks. This technology has helped us a lot. Once lockdowns are lifted by region, real visibility will enable us to plan replenishments on the go by rerouting based on nodal demand.
Thanks, Scott. And, I'm glad that during our discussion today around supply chain systems, the topic of toilet paper supply chain issues has been brought up, which I'm sure many of us, saw the shortages and things that were going on over the past few months. But yeah, no, in all seriousness, I think, a lot of the use cases, technologies, and deployments that you guys have all talked about there, they all really come together. The fleet management, the asset management really brings to life the DSN, or the digital supply chain network that Robin has spoken about. So, I can definitely see, the synergies across all the various, discussion points that each of you have brought to the table. So, thanks, guys. There's no shortage of great ideas and definitely, innovative minds who are out there paving the way for Industry 4.0 and bringing all of this to life. And probably, given the pandemic, in a much more accelerated fashion than what we've seen. And I think, at the top of the hour, I mentioned that, IoT, is not new. It's been going on for a couple of decades, and most of what we're talking about has already been on trend. But what we're really seeing here is the acceleration of a lot of this adoption of technology that's happening. So I'm kind of just looking at the time here, and maybe what we can do is switch gears and take some questions from the audience. I'm looking at the list here, seeing quite a few questions come in. So unfortunately, folks, we won't be able to probably answer all of them today, but please know that we've received them, and we'll have someone from our team follow up and make sure that all of your questions are answered. So with that, why don't we start with our first question? Our first question reads, are all of these trends exclusive to the big companies, or are we seeing an uptick in smaller companies as well? Sandeep, why don't you maybe take that one?
Thanks. What I will say is these are secular trends. Yes, some of these do initiate at the big company level, but for me to answer this question, what you need to understand also is Fleet Complete and who is Fleet Complete. So Fleet Complete is one of the fastest growing telematics companies in the world. And our growth has largely been turbocharged and supported by SMBs and our focus on small to mid-sized businesses. These are fleets of various vocations, various operating environments, various vehicle types from class 1 through class 8 vehicles. Case and point being here that, these trends that we talked about, whether it is digitization of freight or rise of urban trucking or demand for, track and trace, or all of the above are now seen more emerging from small to mid-sized businesses than large fleets, because large fleets historically have had their battery of engineers and IT support staffs, kind of supporting and embracing some of these trends. it's a small to mid-sized businesses who were the receiving end. And now with democratization of technology and availability of IoT technologies at attractive price points enabled by companies such as, Romvi or ourselves and over Rogers Network, we now see it possible for small to mid-sized businesses in availing the same advantages that larger fleets enjoy.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandeep. Our next question from the audience asks, what should companies think about when it comes to supply chain transformation? Robin, given your experience at Deloitte, would you mind taking that one?
Yep, sure, Ricky. A couple of thoughts come to mind here. First of all, do organizations know what they're looking for from the technology? Do they have a clear strategy and a path to value? What are they trying to achieve with the technology? Well, most organizations are making protective bets with COVID-19 by incrementally improving efficiencies with technology. Leaders, on the other hand, are looking for ways to make bold and strategic innovation bets on where to focus post-pandemic to create and capture value. Where will you focus? Where are the opportunities to become more profitable? These are some of the questions to get started with. Our research shows that leaders making bold strategic bets experience up to 22% increase in revenue and up to 19% increase in EBIT. And of those organizations driven by innovation, they're likely to recognize significant ROI in roughly half the time. That's roughly 2 to 3 years versus 5 years. So that was one. Another key decision point is centered around capabilities. What capabilities are needed to achieve strategic objectives, specifically around skill sets? How do you build, buy, or borrow talent? Our research shows that 74% of leaders prioritize innovation technology investments for training and skills development. However, only 20 to 25% of those organizations say that they've made significant progress on understanding what skill sets are needed to compete. And approximately 20% say that they have the organization skills needed in the future. So lack of digital skill sets is the biggest barrier to delivering IoT initiatives focused on track and trace, fleet management, and cold chain compliance. So 20% across the industries generally, and specifically for industries such as wholesale, chemical, and oil and gas, is actually lower. 5 to 10% say that they have the right skills for the future. So key takeaway here is find ways to scale up on talent and breathe life into your corporate strategy through your biggest asset, which is your people.
Thanks, Robin. That's super insightful because I think a lot of us focus maybe a little bit much on the technology and miss the bigger picture around people and strategy, which is definitely critical ingredients for success here. I think we have time for probably one or two more. The next question asks, is this the right time to invest given the current environment? Scott, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, given the global reach you guys have.
Wonderful. I'm happy to answer. So today's decisions will have long-term ramifications for the performance of your supply chain and really the success of your business. COVID-19, we don't believe, is an isolated or a temporary disruption. Disruptions across the globe are increasing in frequency and in magnitude. Certainly, this isn't the first pandemic we've had, but also global storms, recessions, any number of disruptions to the supply chain we see are continue to occur and will continue to occur. So really, the new normal is disruptive. And if the new normal is disruptive, then the new supply chain must be digital. And we can make it digital through IoT, of course. But it's a balance, right? Balancing risk mitigation measures, quality requirements and costs. In the day-to-day balancing act is what supply chain practitioners are charged with doing. One that is too resilient leads to prohibitive cost levels, and one that is too lean to high level of vulnerability. So where do you find the balance in that today? A couple of capabilities to consider as a foundation for resiliency would be, number one, the ability to audit new business decisions based on demand. So by the lane, by the transporter, by the channel, and by the mode of transport, and having real-time information from live sensors, IoT sensors, is critical to do so. And also the ability to quickly establish SLAs based on understood lane performance and parameters without first operating inefficiently for months to document and quantify that. So the manual process when you have a new lane is you get enough information over time to see how you're performing. But if you have that information ahead of time, it allows you to feel more confident to make those decisions to make changes in your supply chain. And really, it's those companies that are thriving today are the ones that can quickly adapt, and only those companies with access to data from IoT can do this successfully. And finally, a few tips perhaps in terms of investments. Finding a provider such as Roamby that provides an on-demand solution, which means no additional infrastructure is required to do so you can get started today, and the ability to use OpEx instead of CapEx. So actual paying by shipment, renting the sensors, returnable sensors, as opposed to having to buy them, can also help kickstart your initiative.
That's great. And thank you for that, Scott. Those are definitely kind of, I guess, innovative business models that can help businesses get started right away. All right. So I got probably time for one last question. I see a couple of questions actually popping up, wondering how people or companies might get started on this whole supply chain transformation journey. If it's okay with you guys, maybe I'll take this one. So maybe even picking up where Robin was speaking, talking about talent. I think really the first step for most organizations to get started is to get the right advice and to get up to speed on the latest and greatest. Knowledge is power, and the reality is for many of us that live in, eat, sleep, breathe this IoT space, IoT is still a fragmented market in many respects. There's a ton of innovation and change that's happening every day, and frankly, it's hard to keep up and separate the noise from the truth. And I say this, speaking on my own behalf, because I operate in this world every day as the leader of the IoT business at Rogers. So I think it's critical to have the right expertise on hand that you can trust, who've been around long enough to know the players and the trends that are going on in the industry, not just of your own, but maybe even more broadly. And I think who's focused on delivering results for your business. Whether it's, it could be any of us on this panel, or it could be some of our Rogers IoT solution specialists. I think we'd all be happy to help, sit down on a conversation and, figure out what's right for you. Whether it be finding the right network technology solution, LTM, NB-IoT, and eventually 5G, or if you're looking for an out-of-the-box solution that's plug and play, such as a fleet solution or an asset management solution, or whether it be a deep consulting engagement that happens at the strategic level and speaks to a much more long-term transformation journey, I think all of us on this panel and all of our respective experts are here to help. And I think we're all really just focused on delivering real results for your business and not just the technology bells and whistles, which, can dominate many of the headlines we see. So I'm looking at the time, and it looks like we're probably going to have to wrap this one up. So gentlemen, it's been an insightful discussion, which I'm sure our audience has enjoyed, but our time is up now, unfortunately. I'd like to thank each of you for taking time to speak with me and share your expertise with all of us. I know we all really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank our audience for tuning in today. I know these aren't easy times, and many of you are going through quite a bit of change as you kind of navigate this new normal. But I do hope that each of you walk away with new information that can help you and your supply chain transformation journey. At this time has caused us to kind of sit back and rethink how we want to plan for the future and navigate, upcoming changes. And whether your goal is to optimize your existing operations or to plan for the next supply chain disruption, I think IoT has the power to unlock new value and take your business to the next level, as we've seen from many of our panel guests today. We invite you to connect with us to discuss how we can help take your business forward in this new normal. And at Rogers, as we say, the best is yet to come. Thank you, everyone.